my initial background is actually in environmental science. My master's is in environmental science, but I also got a dual degree in law. And I started doing litigation, kind of real estate litigation, complex commercial business litigation, partnership disputes, things like that, about almost 11 years ago now. So just over a decade. I went to FIU on full scholarship, which was great. When I got out, I worked for the same firm for the last decade or so, a small boutique firm. We deal with a lot of consumer rights kind of issues. So our specialty was really foreclosure defense law. We represented homeowners and other people in disputes with their mortgage companies who were in foreclosure, mostly defense on the state court level. But we did quite a bit of federal kind of work too, where we were acting as plaintiff. So anytime a lender tried to collect a debt and did it improperly or illegally, we would sue that lender in federal court and try to get them to stop doing what they were doing. And there were a lot of situations where I was also involved in litigation with condo associations. And while I don't specialize in that, and certainly nothing that I say today should be construed as legal advice, I'm happy to chat with you. I am not specialized or how we put it. I'm not specifically licensed, or I can't advocate that the Florida bar licenses me for any particular kind of specialty, but I do have over 10 years of litigation experience in this area. So.
Awesome. So thank you for that. And I appreciate you taking the time again out of your day to
yeah, no problem.
Myself, along with anyone who tunes in now or after the fact. So one thing that I want to kind of do a quick run through, because this is something that I familiarized myself, not in depth, but out of necessity. I ended up buying a condo in 2013 that I lived in for quite a while. I was living in the building for about 10 years. So I understand a little bit about basically, people know condos, obviously, especially if you live in South Florida. My understanding, and this is where I want you to basically bring me back on the rails, fine tune my understanding, but basically how it works is the developer or whoever has all the money comes in, buys the property, builds the condo physically, and puts in place the set of rules that will dictate how the association that will then take over running the property, how they operate, how the board members are elected, and all those types of things. And they put that in place. And then basically once the condo is either completed, or I guess once all the units are sold, I don't know what point in the process, the developer, the person with the money who built the property and kind of put all this stuff together, bows out and is like, all right, it's your guys' problem now. From what I understand, this process, and I don't know if it's specific to South Florida or not, but generally involves a lot of litigation in terms of things that the developer does that are focused, obviously, at the end of the day for them on the bottom line and on maximizing their profits and being able to sell as many units as possible, like for them to get out, but not necessarily that are in the best interest of running a property in a community after they leave. So I know, for example, the building that I own a condo at, not the building I own by any means, the building I own a condo in, Quantum in the Bay in Edgewater, I know that we dealt with litigation against the developer because there were things, and I think we won on certain points. We, the association, won on certain points because there were things that were done improperly, or there were, whatever issues that they were at fault for. So can you talk a little bit about or expand on any areas that I may have?
So yeah, sure. I think initially it's very important for people to understand what they're getting into when they buy a house or a condo or apartment that comes with a homeowners association or a condo association. Florida has laws in place that I would say highly favor the condo association, almost across the board. It's really difficult. And the real irony is, if you become involved in litigation with your condo association, it is essentially you funding the litigation against yourself, because you are paying your condo dues, which in turn are generally used to pay the attorney's fees for the condo association that is going to fight with you about whatever issue you have. So that's one thing to bear in mind if you're thinking about litigating against your condo association, is that you're basically going to be paying to fight against yourself and your neighbors. Same story. Now, a lot of people don't realize, but condo associations at one point were probably a really good idea. They were put in place because you had these communities or buildings with lots of communal areas that nobody really wanted to take care of or pay for, but they like to use. Swimming pools, gyms, front yards, bushes around the building, general areas of things that needed to be maintained that were not necessarily directly attached to anyone's unit, but still needed to be taken care of. It was a disaster for a very long time before we really worked out the laws that developed condo associations. And they were, at least at their inception, intended to do very good things. They were supposed
Like
to
the
take care.
unions.
What's that?
Like the unions.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very similar kind of scenario. They had good intentions. The problem is that the laws regarding condo associations have become so broad that they're kind of their own monster now, and they can easily be manipulated because of how strict things can be. And I'll tell you, as a foreclosure defense attorney for over 10 years, if I ever had a client who came to me with a condo association dispute or in arrears with their condo association, and either the condo association had filed a foreclosure against them or were about to, I never took their money. I always said, listen, you will be so much better served if you take what money you would to pay me and go and work out a deal with your condo association. There were so many times when I was dealing with clients where I made a phone call myself pro bono just to help them get the ball rolling, because they would wind up paying me as much as oftentimes they could settle their condo association dispute with, and we were going to lose. They're all losing cases. It's very, very difficult to win a condo association foreclosure because you don't really have any defenses. You can argue about the amount you owe them, but at the end of the day, you owe them, and that's it. And they can kick you out very quickly.
So I'm going to take that opportunity to segue. So I want to touch on one kind of definition or distinction
Sure.
before I jump in, but that is the perfect segue for me to get into my personal experience with condo associations. So one thing I want to just clarify is there's two different entities. There's condo associations and there's homeowners associations,
Right.
right? And I'll post a link to the source where I got this kind of quick, easy, this like kind of what the difference is between the two. But the main difference, as far as I can explain it, is with a condo association, each member owns their individual unit and have a joint ownership interest in the common areas, which is kind of what you described earlier. So for example, a condo owner has a joint owner inside that unit, versus with a homeowner association, each member owns their individual property and their lot, but the common areas are owned by either the association itself, or I'm sorry, the common areas are owned by the association, so the individual owners don't have any ownership interest in the common areas, but the homeowner association may be wholly independent, a wholly independent entity, or it may be owned by the developer of the community.
So that's a pretty good general explanation. You can garner a lot of, if you're unsure, you can actually look at the deed to your property. Oftentimes the deeds themselves will tell you what your ownership interest is. It will tell you the appurtenances there too, and the common areas and things like that. Those are the kind of condo deeds you'll see, so you'll know. But yeah, that's a good basic definition. Not always accurate, but
right. And so with everything legal, there's yes, you can find all the precedents you want, but there's no, I think, clear cut. That's why we have judges, right? So just to clarify whether that entity regulates or oversees both condo associations and homeowner associations, or one or the other.
I mean, actually, it's vastly more than that. They would regulate any of those business entities, but pretty much every business in Florida, you're talking about millions of businesses, they do have some form of regulatory authority over just about anybody who needs a business license to conduct business in Florida.
Okay.
Like,
and that is
real estate agents, veterinarians, restaurants, anybody you want to complain about.
And that is where we're getting, that is the entity that if you have an issue with, for example, the board of the condo that you live in, that is the entity that you would file a complaint. And this is obviously barring a blatant, outright illegal activity, in which case, obviously, you contact like the police or appropriate law enforcement agency. Right?
Yes,
okay.
For sure.
So now I'm going to try to keep it to like 5 to 10 minutes to just give a quick summary of my personal situation. And you can feel free to weigh in on the specifics of it or pull more general aspects that maybe you've encountered or that you feel. I'm breaking up.
No, go ahead. Yep.
That you feel are examples or illustrations of larger issues within the condo system. So basically, the building that I currently own a condo in, I've lived in since 2009, which was about a year after it finished being built. And I got active pretty quickly in terms of the board meetings and all of that to kind of like, okay, I'm living in this building. Let's see what is going on. It happened that anywhere from the last 3 to 5 years, anywhere from 3 to 5 years ago, I saw this situation unfold, and I'm sure you will be familiar with the sort of thing that I'm going to describe. So basically, there was a married couple who owned a unit in the building, who still own a unit in the building and live in the building. The wife was the president of so the building has 2 towers. Each tower in itself, and I'm fact checking myself, each individual tower has a condo association that manages it. And then there is a master board, which is a homeowner association, which manages all the common elements that are shared by the 2 towers. So there are 2 condo associations, North Tower, South Tower, and a master association that kind of manages the things in between the 2.
Right. So that just to jump in very quickly, that's not necessarily a sort of a common scenario. And one of the things that Florida law allows condo associations to do is kind of organize themselves however the hell they want. And much to, in many cases, the detriment of the owners of the property. So just be very careful. Make sure before you even apply or purchase a property, you should read the condo association documents and understand what you're getting into.
Wife, president of the South Tower, husband on the master board. The wife, without any kind of vote or any kind of like resident demand, like there was no impetus for this action, using the tower funds, files for a recall of the master board. And as I'm sure I don't have to tell you, but with the technicalities that are involved with these types of association elections, it's not that hard to find a technicality on which to nullify the results of an election after the fact. Even with that, it took something like 2 to 3 years, 3 appeals, because the first 2 rulings were denied. But in the end, and there's a question of, without any substance, but there's a question of whether the firm that was retained by the South Tower maybe had, friends in Tallahassee, and there were the reviewer responsible for the case changed 3 times, and on the 3rd time with the 3rd reviewer, they won the appeal. The result of
You're
which,
talking, you did an appeal through the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation.
I assume, yes, I would have to
probably. It's usually a mandatory arbitration regarding condo association disputes.
So yeah, what the extent of my knowledge on the specifics is that basically it went before 3 reviewers or arbiters or whatever the case may be, that the first 2 denied, like said basically no, the election stands. And the third one, 2 to 3 years later, was like, okay, basically the recall is approved, which meant that the wife on the South Tower basically was able to place her husband, who was on the master board, to place him as the president of the master board, take everyone who up until then was on the master board, take them out, and replace them basically with puppets, which for the last 1 to 2 years since that decision was made has meant basically that this married couple held power. Do you still hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Meant that this married couple basically ran the building. And that included influencing and interfering with the appeals committee that is the only entity within the infrastructure that allows residents or owners to appeal a fine that they're given. I mean, I don't have to tell you, but for the sake of those listening, that it's basically a committee of residents that are chosen, that are supposed to be objective and to review fines once they're levied against a resident or an owner to say, okay, this is justified or not. And that's your only recourse as someone who is getting fined, to say this isn't fair, I'm being targeted, anything like that.
Yeah, so it's a little bit nuts in Florida. Condo association boards are they operate as kind of like their own mini governments. Condo association boards are kind of like mini dictatorships, really, run by a group of dictators instead of typically just one, although it's usually one aggressive dictator who is at the forefront of all the argument. But that's one of the problems with condo associations is I tell everybody, listen, if you have one lunatic who likes to hold on to power and do whatever they want, they can make your life really miserable if they decide they don't like you. So that's one of the issues.
So you addressed the flaw, I think, from what I heard, in the condo system and how basically the boards are elected.
Florida law gives a lot of leeway about how condo associations want to govern themselves, how they're set up. And unfortunately, a lot of power is given to a very few number of people. And believe it or not, many people have very little interest in kind of
very familiar, very aware, very familiar,
being active in their community. People have busy lives and busy jobs, and it's difficult to get kind of passive or introverted people to take on another additional responsibility. Usually what you see is self-serving and self-interested people who actively try to go onto boards because they realize that they can control and dictate things that they want actively in their lives. And usually they have a lot of time on their hands too, which makes them dangerous.
And so perfect. Again, you're setting up all the pins perfectly for me, because this is basically an older married couple. I don't really know that much about them personally in terms of whether they have kids or hobbies or anything like that. But they happen to also be the main, if not the only, directors, officers, managing staff for a neighborhood association called the Biscayne Neighbors Association. Up until recently, the husband was also a member of the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board for the city of Miami. So this is clearly people with some kind of political aspirations who have found opportunities to manipulate the systems in place to create opportunities for themselves, whether they be financial or not, or otherwise, meaning networking and creating like opportunities for other things. Now, one of the main big issues that I have in terms of what is for me a clear abuse of power by this married couple is the fact that they put themselves using association funds, put themselves in control of the property of the building just because the South Tower is the majority plus the master, without any kind of vote or any kind of input from the residents or owners, sign up the property to be a member of this neighborhood association, which involves a $5 per unit fee annually to this neighborhood association. Now, Quantum on the Bay is one of, if not the I know it's one of the, if not the largest condominium in the city of Miami. I don't know. I'll like fact check and put in the comments like the exact numbers and facts, but we're almost 700 units between the two towers, which obviously in parentheses looks very good when Mr. Andres, the president from the master board, presents himself to organizations like the DDA, like to city commissioners, to say, I represent the interest of, 700 units times X amount of people. And then you add on the other handful of buildings that are members. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden I represent the interest of tens of thousands of residents in your district, when it's like, in the actuality is no one actually elected you to your position. No one actually not believes in, but nobody actually has any opinion on the actions that you're taking, because they're either not aware of them or they don't affect them. And so when you have that type of situation where, again, $5 a unit times, between 600 to 700 units, that's in a condo budget, probably not the most substantial line item, but it is a substantial sum of money that is going to a neighborhood association that this couple, I assume, and I have more than a cursory knowledge of the fact that, if you're on that type of board, you have, expenses for going to meetings and networking and, whether it's gas, meals and entertainment and things like that. So that they're financially benefiting, whether they're getting an actual salary or not, they're getting a financial benefit from having pushed the condo that they took control over to become members of. And that's like the tip of the iceberg in terms of then also picking certain companies, whether it's the law firm that represents the condo or the management company that runs the condo or the valet company that runs the condo, and opportunities for kickbacks and things like that, that there is, at the end of the day, really no oversight unless, and I've read articles about other condos and situations like this that have run, and the phenomena, if you want to like really, anyone wants to like kind of look into this phenomena, it's Condo Commandos is the term that has become associated with these types of
just for a quick counterpoint, people should also realize, if this is educational, that a lot of people get roped into condo positions that they have no interest in doing because nobody else will do them. I had a recent client consultation with a friend of mine's father who came to me because he's elderly and he moved into Keystone Points, one of the communities over there with an HOA, and he's literally completely stuck in this position. He doesn't want it. He's exhausted and tired of dealing with it. He got sucked into it because the prior president of the board developed cancer and they asked him to do it, but not realizing that he now is literally unable to simply resign. He has to get somebody else to take his position over, or he could theoretically be financially liable for problems of the condo association. So it can be a double-edged sword as well.
And I will say, because to give the kind of the counter view, I've seen people, so I'm in the North Tower, which is the minority association out of the three. And I've seen people who were at one point involved on the master board as well, because it used to be there was like representation from both associations in the master board. And I've seen people who are involved from the inception, from when the condo got turned over to the association from the developer, who have been involved with the board and very similar, who have been dealing, especially in the last, let's say, 5 years, with this couple specifically, and their self-serving, in my opinion, tactics and the things that they've done, and that they've found themselves powerless and affected in a negative way, both because of the fact that the appearance and the caliber, the quality of life in the condo has gone down because this married couple is literally targeting, myself included, has happened because I've spoken out at board meetings against some of the things that they've done, and they target me very blatantly, and give me fines for putting flyers up that didn't say anything about them. The flyers allegedly that I allegedly put up said, if you're not upset, you're not paying attention, come to meetings, like get involved in what's happening in the condo. Because as you said, the biggest issue with this condo board issue is apathy, and the fact that people, unless it really substantially affects them on a personal level, they don't care.
Many people feel either apathetic or they feel resigned because they have tried to do something and utterly failed at every step of the way. And a big part of that is because if you sue your condo association or you have to go to mandatory arbitration, you're doing it yourself. Whereas whomever you're upset with on the condo board, you're not suing them personally. You're suing the condo you live in and pay dues for, which means they have a lawyer. They don't have to do a thing. The lawyer does everything and fights with you. You are there struggling to either pay your own lawyer or teach yourself condo association law, which is a daunting task.
Yes, and so that is something that I went through a few years ago, and then resigned myself to the fact that it wasn't going to go anywhere. And I spoke to lawyers, familiar with condo law specifically and all of that. And so it became this kind of this like subculture of these people who were frustrated and tired of the fact that nothing we could do had any teeth to create any change. And it took literally, in this past year, there was basically a group of concerned, a combination of tenants, residents, and owners. And it was basically a concerted effort there was like a group chat of upwards of 80 people. And this is to give you an example. When I used to go more regularly to the board meetings, in a building with over 600 units, we would have, on a good day, maybe 30 people in attendance at these board meetings.
That's still pretty impressive, to be honest.
Counting the 5 or 6 people on the actual board. So that's disappointing and sad, the fact that is impressive. Because
most of the boards that I am intimately familiar with and are aware of struggle to get 2, 3
like
people.
Quorum.
You can't get quorum, generally speaking. So,
and that's the thing is it's a self-perpetuating issue because of the fact that it's so hard to create real change in these systems. People are like, okay, well, I'm not going to deal with it. And then comes time where the only thing that you can do, right, is cast your vote and change the leadership. One, you have to find people who are willing to do it, and it's a thankless job. And I know people who have been doing it for, over 5 years, over 10 years. And you get all the complaints and none of the thanks when you do the right things. And when things go wrong that aren't your fault, you get all the blame. And I 100% feel for the people in those positions. I was asked to do it, and I'm like, I had too many things going on in my personal life to take it on knowing what I would be taking on. And so that's the problem, is that many times to follow the letter of the law in the rules of the elections, you can't even get a quorum, which means that you meet the minimum requirements for the election to be valid. So basically it stays status quo, and whoever's on the board in their position stays there. And it, unless there's certain rules for them to replace people within the board itself, that's pretty much what you're stuck with. So it took a very diligent, concerted effort to finally replace the wife on the South Tower board, because the Master Tower, which is the HOA, is much more complicated. So that now at least we have the 2 individual boards that are people who are actively actually trying to make the community, the property better for the people who live there, to now work in unison to try and address the master board issue?
So most condo associations and homeowners associations, the documents that govern them, they're basically their Bill of Rights, to put it in terms that your listeners may understand. They authorize the condo association in many cases to essentially contract out the work that the condo association board is supposed to do themselves. The very wording in the documents say that if you have the money, you are authorized to essentially hire what the equivalent of a property management company would do. So it's not easy because condo associations are run like small countries and businesses. And many people on condo boards have no idea what they're doing. They don't understand how to budget. They don't understand what the laws are regarding community, anything. So, I mean, it's a question of what you think works better. I have seen situations. The one in Keystone Point, they were very fortunate in that the treasurer of the condo association was in fact a CPA, so that worked out great for them.
We're lucky because we have one on the North Tower board also.
And you're very lucky because it's not a very common thing that somebody with a professional job wants to do an additional job that they do every day, all day, again at home for free. But it's all part of owning a condo in South Florida. I tell so many people I know what you're doing before you get involved. I will never live in a condo for the rest of my life. I've done it in other states and countries. Florida is by far and away the worst. I will never live in a condo or be anywhere with an HOA in South Florida. It's bad enough to have the city to contend with, but to have a small despotic group of individuals that you may or may not get along with, who can destroy your happiness and joy, it's not my thing.
And so that's an important point that you bring up that I wanted to touch on, is the fact that this system is specific to Florida, and it's something that is not necessarily universal, whether it's even just in the US, let alone obviously international. But so that's something that I wasn't sure of in terms of like the DBPR. I knew that was a state body, but I didn't know whether it was just basically there was the equivalent in every other state and how similar or not to ours.
Well, every state has something very similar to the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation. Any state where there's licensing of any kind of business, even like cosmetologists, anything that requires you to get any kind of professional license, they're going to have some kind of governing board for that. But the DBPR is not the end all sort of, they regulate what the state legislature defines as Florida condo law. And Florida condominium law is, I mean, it's pretty unique in many regards. And one of the reasons, if you think about it, is South Florida is basically the mecca of immigrants and condos. We are an ocean
between the immigrants and the retirees, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of fraud. We are the elder fraud capital of the world. We are the Medicaid fraud capital of the world. Credit card, we're very, very high up there. I mean, there were a lot of instances and really horrible. I mean, look, to go back to my earlier thing that a lot of people don't understand is, if you don't pay your condo association dues, that's wholly and separate from paying your mortgage. You have your mortgage payments and you have your condo dues. If you don't pay your mortgage, you could sit in a house for potentially years in South Florida before they foreclose on you and take it away from you. If you don't pay your condo association, I've seen condo associations literally foreclose and kick people out of their places in a month, 2 months, gone, done. And they sell these properties at auction. But a lot of people don't realize is they buy these condos at auction, foreclosure auction, and they're buying them subject to a first lien holder, which is the mortgage. And here they are, they think they bought a condo for 25 grand and they haven't done anything of the sort. What they've done is they've bought the right to have that condo subject to a first lien that is ultimately going to foreclose on them and throw them out as well. And the condo is just looking to pay back dues, and they can do that. And a lot of people, they're not required to tell people buyer beware. They're not required to tell people to do their diligence. I've had a lot of clients come into my office really upset and not understanding why their condo they've lived in for the last year, all of a sudden are being told the bank owns it. So
Right.
it's a weird situation we live in here in South Florida.
As with everything with life in South Florida. But so okay, I just wanted to try and kind of wrap this up because I can talk for like another hour about my specific issues with these specific people in this.
I can give you days, man. I can give you nothing but anecdotes for days.
I can imagine, and maybe we'll do that over beer one of these days. But I want to try and end with like a glimmer of hope with a silver lining. I know in my case, for example, the positive is it's not if you build it, they will come, but I guess if the situation gets so bad and impacts so many people, just in parentheses, it got so bad in my building that I don't even know who, like to this day, I don't know if they found out, but the on like Google Maps and all of that stuff, when you looked up the property, the address, it would come up as Quantum on the Bay prison complex. And it's like, as the board, as the management, like, how are the only reason it came to my attention is because people were pointing it out in this group chat that was aimed at like, how do we address this issue of these people who have taken control of our building? And it took so much to be able to finally get results in terms of changing this problem situation, but it happened. We did it, and it took literally like maybe 5-6 years of many different people trying and then getting different people involved, and it took, they say you have to hit rock bottom before you go, before you can pick yourself back up, and I think that's unfortunately the situation now, meaning the situation has to get so bad that enough owners start getting involved.
It is important for people to understand that there are laws in place that are intended to remedy really egregious violations of fiduciary duties. Because look, if you sit on a board, you're acting as a board member, you're intended to act in the best interests of the residents of that condominium association. Just like any other despotic ruler, whether you do it or not, you are supposed to care about the people that you're making decisions for. And if somebody is embezzling money or doing what somebody could consider a blatantly illegal act, there are remedies for that. And of course, you can try to use the police. Usually the police don't get involved in small civil matters, but you can potentially do like what the resident is doing in the article that you posted preceding this discussion. And that seems like what I would imagine a very egregious misuse of funds and a violation of the fiduciary duty. And there is a civil remedy for that. You have to get a lawyer, have a consult, and sue them. And potentially there is personal liability there if they embezzled or intended to benefit themselves in ways that are violative of the condominium docs. So there's always a remedy. Sometimes it's just expensive.
Yeah, usually.
Damn lawyers.
All right, Amida, I really appreciate you taking the time. I would like to maybe, whether it's like on a live setting or even like in writing, or we have a talk and I kind of summarize for the good people out in the general interwebs.
Sure.
Kind of in a more concise way, paint a clearer picture of everything that we covered today. But I think we touched on some good points, and I think definitely helped clarify some of both the issues and the possible remedies to those issues when it comes to.
It's a huge topic. I mean, you literally could talk for days about it.
Yes.
And that's why I usually just recommend people don't fight with your condo boards. And if you really are one of those people who likes to be independent, don't move into a condo.
And if you're going to pick your battles and make sure you have a case before you go down that road, and prepare yourself for a long, expensive, hard battle.
Very true.
Is there anything I wanted to ask? Because I know you're involved in a lot of things personally outside of work. Is there anything that you want to like plug that's going on, or causes that you want people to like look into and support?
No, I mean, look, I went to law school to help people. So I had the great fortune of getting a scholarship to go to law school. I feel like the reason I do these things is to do whatever I can to help whomever I can. I do a lot of pro bono work. When you come over for that beer, remind me to tell you about the Condo Association fight over a parking spot. I did pro bono. That's a crazy story.
Okay.
But I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. If you let me know, I'll respond to them or just tag me in them. Like I said, I can't tell anybody that anything I say constitutes legal advice, but if they're in a real bind, they could always reach out to me directly and we can have a proper consultation.
Perfect. All right. Thank you again so much,
Yeah.
Amida, and cheers.
Yeah, have a good day.